welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the honor of having been invited and included in the conversation. The other panelists are fantastic, and it was so wonderful to hear the words from the sister to launch us into this conversation. I want to echo her thoughts because it's at this time that it's very easy to sink into cynicism and to lose faith and to decide to be the victim. It's easy to decide that we can't change anything, and therefore let's not participate. I want us to remember, don't play the victim. This is the time to fight back. This is the time to rearm yourself and say no. This is the time to find that inner strength and say never again. And it doesn't help to be a cynic and to denigrate the efforts of those who have gone before us, who have faced this same struggle, and to act as if they never fought or never did anything. Behind me, you see this flag. It's one of the 3 flags in my house representing my family's effort to fight for democracy. And so I don't want us to act like we've never fought. Here's the situation we're in. I know you have been told many times, this is the most important election. Well, the reality is each one of those was, because we are where we are because those elections went the wrong way. And now we are where Black people have always been the prophets to America. We tried to tell you. That's our prophetic message to this nation. Here's where we are. This is not only a crisis in terms of health, it's a super crisis in terms of our economy. So the irony of the situation is this. So often we look inward in communities of color when there are economic downturns, because in normal economic times, we don't enjoy the fruit of economic recoveries in the same way that other communities have. And we get the sense that it doesn't matter what I do, we end up at the bottom, and it's planned that way. And there's often the tendency to believe that if there is a downturn, it was designed to push us back down. The reality is economic downturns are like bombs. They drop, they destroy the economy for everyone. And this time, it actually hurt white men more. The unemployment rate for white men went up dramatically more than in the past. So that while it is horrible that Black men face an unemployment rate of 16.7%, that is not the worst unemployment rate Black men have faced. The recession of 1980 that Paul Volcker gave this nation was the worst Black men ever faced. The recession that we call the Great Recession was worse than this for Black men. White men have never, ever, ever had double-digit unemployment, ever. So the fact that this economy collapsed, this isn't just about us. And the scary part, the part that should frighten you, is that this failure to take control of our economy has resulted in the worst labor market white men have ever faced. And yet, this president still has a 46% approval rate. If that doesn't frighten you, I mean, come to grasp with, yes, in the past, you could imagine that some people were fooling themselves that when we had these other recessions and their unemployment rate went up, they were fooling themselves that, yeah, but somehow or another, I can still believe what I want to believe. But in this situation, the objective reality is this man messed up worse than anybody in history. Anybody. And yet he can still command their allegiance. This means they're fighting for something else. They're not rational. as economists would consider someone rational. They're not voting for their economic interest. Now, the part of the labor movement is to continue to educate people so that they vote for their economic interest and drop everything else. So part of it is us understanding the moment of danger that we are in, because as much as people want to talk about the burning of the 3rd precinct in Minneapolis and call that a riot, when armed people took over the state capital of Michigan and forced it to stop operating, that's a riot. Just because the police decided they weren't going to intervene, just because the state troopers decided they weren't going to do anything about armed people taking over a state capital, that doesn't mean it wasn't a riot. That means it was a riot and everybody just waved their hands. But that was a riot. And that's the fear that we must understand is the moment we're in, rather than respond to the reality of having been lied to, cheated, and robbed in this economy. We saw their anger vented at legitimate government. This is the threat we face. It is the threat to democracy, that we will retreat from the voice of the people. It is our responsibility to once again save America, to save it for democracy, to save it for what it can be, and not to give in to someone else's narrative as the final say on what America can be. Do not be cynical and say, oh, well, America was always that way, so it will always be that way. That's giving someone a vision and letting them claim the victory. They lost the Civil War. Understand that. They lost the Civil War. Thousands of Black men removed from slavery by 1 year, 2 years, and some of them still enslaved, joined and beat them and changed this country to give a different vision for this nation. Don't let them down. Don't act like they didn't do that. Don't let them act like you didn't beat them. We won. Don't rewrite history as if they won and their vision was the only vision. Our vision won, and our vision was a legitimate vision for this nation going forward. Don't get cynical and say theirs is the only vision and theirs ultimately always wins. Don't be the victim. The crisis we face, ironically, is that they are so twisted, and the story has been so twisted about what's going on with the virus. You have repeatedly heard about comorbidity factors explain why Black people are dying from the virus. Black people are inferior because they get diabetes, they're obese, and they have asthma and lung problems. That is not why we're dying. That is not why we're dying from this virus. We are dying from this virus because we are workers. We are dying from this virus because we are disproportionately healthcare workers. We are disproportionately public transit drivers. We are disproportionately grocery store clerks. We are disproportionately the workers who are on the front line exposed to the virus more than anyone else, and we don't get to telework. Our work is with the people. Now, this is why this is the irony. Maybe you remember in the film Raiders of the Lost Ark, when the Harrison Ford character is in a battle with some Nazi thugs who are looking for this amulet, and one of them has him down, has Harrison Ford's character down, right? Indiana is down. And the Nazi guy says, shoot them both. In other words, if I have to kill you to kill him, that's okay. I don't care. That's what white workers are facing right now. Disproportionately, we are healthcare workers, but they're willing to sacrifice white healthcare workers too. Disproportionately, we drive buses, but we're not the only ones who drive buses, but they're willing to kill them too. Disproportionately, we work as grocery store clerks. They're willing to kill the white people grocery store clerks too. White people are not invincible in this disease. They die They just don't get it as often. That's the difference. The way we have constructed the view of this economy and the outcome that we're going through is to disguise the failure of leadership to address the economic calamity we're facing right now. We must protect the democracy to come out of this. We must restore real leadership, and we must restore a faith and a belief in a battle that goes on and on and on, and it's not going to stop, and it's not going to stop just because you want to give up. So please, the work you are doing to encourage people to have the courage, the work you are doing to get people to feel empowered, the work that you are doing to get people to go out and vote, the work that you're doing to get people to continue the fight is so exceedingly vital in this moment, because these two crises of health and economy are not going to solve themselves. And you are the captains of the fight to get people to charge that hill, to make America be what it can be and not fall into that cynicism.